Okay, hello everybody. I'm just going to give it a couple of like a minute for people to trickle in while Wealthbox just or not Wealthbox, Zoom allows people to come in one at a time for whatever reason. I know that Kitsis always mentions that too. We were just talking about a couple of memory lane stories. One of them was that I used to be on the MES team, and Ariel used to be a member of XYPN, and I was her, yeah, I was her member experience specialist, just right down for a very hot second when we overlapped before she officially joined, or started this part of her business. So a different venture, but it was really good. Good times. Almost 5 years ago now. Crazy to think. Okay, well, I will kick us off. It is 12:01 local time. So, welcome everybody to today's Solution Spotlight. It is titled Strategic Automation and CRM with Wealthbox and Sphynx Automation. So, joining us today are Chris Kopansky, Senior Product Specialist at Wealthbox, and a guest, Ariel Minicozy, who is the founder of Sphynx Automation. And by combining Wealthbox's easy to use CRM with Sphynx Automation smart tools, independent planners such as yourself can simplify their work and improve client connections. And with XYPN support for advisors, they are creating a smoother and more effective wealth management experience, just allowing financial professionals to focus on providing excellent service to their clients. So I will let Chris and Ariel introduce themselves, and I'm going to jump right to reviewing housekeeping items. There is the chat feature in the Q&A tab within Zoom. We encourage you to drop all of your questions as they come up in that Q&A tab, and then you can upvote as appropriate, but just do and drop your questions, and Chris and Ariel will get to those as they come up, and at the very end of their presentation. And then we have some upcoming events with XYPN on November 20th. That is our next Learn to Launch office hours with XYPN success strategists. I will drop a registration link in the chat below so that you can register. And then October 8th, so next Tuesday, we have another solution spotlight, Bridging Generations, Mastering Strategies for the Great Wealth Transfer with InvestNet Money Guide. It is CE credit eligible and it's one CFP credit, and I will drop that registration link down below as well. Last but not least, we are in October. Live is right around the corner. It's in about 2 weeks, if my calendar math is correct. You may have seen that promo as you were hanging out in the waiting room. October 15th to October 17th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Tickets are $5.99 for XYPN members, $6.99 for non-members. There is going to be the registration link. And then, as an added bonus, Ariel is hosting a 90-minute workshop on Tuesday. So that is October 15th at 1:30 Central Time, which is one of those content session days. So if you are planning on attending live, if you do appreciate and like the content of this webinar that you're about to participate in, then be sure to check out her workshop then. Chris is also going to be dropping by, so you'll see them both again then. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Chris and Ariel. Bye, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. I've got a little bit of a slide deck prepared here, so I'll go ahead and pull that up. But thank you for the introduction, Sarah, and hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. Today, we will be covering strategic automation and CRM in financial services with, of course, Wealthbox and Sphynx Automation. The host for the actual presentation will, of course, be myself representing Wealthbox. My name is Chris Kopansky, Senior Product Specialist here at Wealthbox. I've been here at Wealthbox for close to 9 years now, in that time working with thousands of firms and kind of helping firms get set up with Wealthbox and really get the most out of it. In that time, I've also been working with XYPN very closely, dating back to my first XYPN Live conference back in 2017, and I'm definitely looking forward to XYPN Live 2024. But today we are also joined by Ariel Minicozy, CEO of Sphynx Automation, but I certainly don't want to steal your thunder. Ariel, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thanks, Sarah, as well. I'm Ariel Minicozy. I'm the founder and CEO of Sphynx Automation. As Sarah mentioned, I am a former financial advisor and RAA owner, as well as XYPN member. So I've been on the other side of this webinar many times, but now I'm in the spotlight, so to speak. We help financial advisors set up and automate their tech to streamline their processes and make running their businesses much more efficient. You can't really see my shirt, but it says small business, big impact. And that is our mission and our vision for the work we do every day with independent financial advisors.
Awesome, Ariel. Thank you so much for co-hosting with me. And before we do jump into our topic, I know that a lot of you are already using Wealthbox, but I know that we're also joined by some that aren't. So I just wanted to quickly introduce Wealthbox for those that are not familiar. So Wealthbox is a modern, easy-to-use CRM for financial advisors. We offer complementary migrations from any other CRM that you might already be using. If you would like to check us out, you could always head on over to wealthbox.com, click on book a demo to learn more. Ariel, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, and I know you talked a little bit about Sphynx Automation, but can you tell us a bit more about Sphynx? What can folks kind of expect with working with Sphynx?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris, and thank you for the opportunity to mention that. We are primarily a consulting firm. We work with advisors to, again, set up and automate their technology and their processes. We have a range of different service offerings from those who are more tech savvy and or have more time on their hands. We offer templates and courses for the DIY-minded folks. In the middle of our spectrum of services, we offer done with you coaching for those who maybe have gotten started but need a little help taking their setups over the finish line. And then on the far end of the spectrum, we offer done for you white glove automation services. Our work primarily centers around low or no code tools, things like Zapier, Jotform, and integrating those with other tools like Wealthbox.
Awesome, thank you. And I'll actually bring our screen share back up here just to talk a little bit about kind of what you'll get from this session to almost summarize what we're going to be covering. So primarily, we're going to talk about how we will be able to identify automation opportunities that are beyond AI scope. We'll be covering how we can leverage Sphynx Automation and third-party tools like Zapier for administrative tasks. We'll also be able to cover best practices for deciding when to automate versus using AI. And this is something that is always very interesting. I actually spoke with Ariel on a different webinar about this. So really excited about that portion. And then we'll also cover how we can enhance efficiency and productivity through strategic automation solutions to streamline your workflows and elevate client management in Wealthbox CRM. So now I'll actually cut the screen share. Now we're in it for a conversation. So we'll jump right into the topic. Ariel, first question here, and I know that you always have a really good kind of introduction to this, but what is AI?
I said this last time we had this exact conversation, and I'm going to say the same thing again. Even though there have been actually a number of advancements in the technological landscape, specifically around OpenAI, they just released a new model last week, actually, or a week, 2 weeks ago, give or take. So the timing of this is quite relevant. But even with the newest and improved AI model, AI is still not the science fiction dream that we've had for 50 plus years of a fully autonomous, logically thinking type of robotic system. When we talk about the AI that's available to us today, the AI that we have available to us today is just, in my opinion, a modernization of the same types of tools and logic that we have had in the past. Typical traditional coding in previous years until the advancement of chip technology and more advanced computing strategies has been rules-based. You tell the computer system, if this happens, do this thing, and if this other thing happens, do something else instead. Modern AI models are just an offshoot of that type of logical thinking. But what is more advanced about the AI we have available today, again, due to advances in computing and in technology, is that ability for the AI to gather outside data and integrate it into its rule set. So it's not just necessarily humans telling the programming each and every rule that it needs to follow. The system itself is able to attain outside data and integrate it, but it's still very rules-based. It's not necessarily fully autonomous, and there are still a lot of bugs unfortunately, within some of the AI models that exist today.
Sure. Yeah. And with today's AI model, how does that actually differ from automation?
Yeah, I think it's really just, again, an offshoot. I don't necessarily think there's a distinct line between AI and automation. AI, I would say, is the logic and the intelligence, and automation is perhaps more so the application of that intelligence, taking your processes and outlining them step by step and plugging that into perhaps an AI model or a less advanced rules-based type of logic model, applying that and actually making the activities happen. Things like kicking off a workflow in Wealthbox, or adding an event to your calendar and syncing it to the right contact in your Wealthbox. Those automations are the application of those rules in real time and not just the rules themselves.
Right. Yeah. And you had just mentioned that just a couple of weeks ago, there was a new update to OpenAI, right? To that platform. Uh, what, if any, are some of the benefits and limitations of AI? Are there any limitations? Where are we? How close are we to science fiction?
We're not that close, unfortunately. I mean, again, I think that especially OpenAI, and there are other AI models out there, but that's probably one of the more popular ones available today. It does a lot, and it can do a lot of things well. I think particularly where the current AI excels is natural language processing. Things like transcribing meetings is a really great application for AI. It's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good, and it's getting better every day. Things like generating drafts for marketing emails, even generating images and content that's getting more and more realistic. It's not perfect, but it's definitely getting better. Things where it's not as good right now is that logic-based thinking. That was the intent of the O1 model, which is the new model that OpenAI just released, but I've been playing around with it and it's just not quite there yet. You still really need to know exactly how to structure the requests you're making to the system in order to get it to output what you want. And even then, you still need to spot check and ensure that the data you're getting is accurate and it's processed in the right way.
Yeah, definitely. And how would you identify automation opportunities that are beyond AI's scope, right? It's that logic thinking. How can you tell? How can you tell something should be an automation?
Yeah, I think again, it's not a clear and distinct line. There's a merger between utilizing AI and using, let's call it, traditional types of automation, things like writing code, writing custom API calls, or even using those new low or no code tools like Zapier or Make. If you can incorporate AI into streamlining the process of building those things, there's even Zapier integrations for OpenAI. Zapier recently released an AI builder helper, let's call it, to help you build out your Zaps. All you have to do is plug in a description of what you're hoping to get, and the AI will draft that Zap for you. And so there's a difference, I guess, but the difference is not always distinct. And I'd say if you can use AI, start off with that, great, because it'll streamline and make more efficient your process of mapping out what you're hoping to do and building it out. But where the AI capability ends is where you can use that second level of, let's say, less complex coding and automation tools. And then even before actually all of that, I'm jumping ahead, but even before any of that happens, my recommendation would be to try to see if there are native integrations between the tools you're trying to connect. And Wealthbox has a great integrations page, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about scoping out some opportunities, but just to kind of sneak peek what we're going to talk about, Wealthbox has a great integrations page listing out all their integrations partners that you can connect without actually even needing any third-party tools, letting them talk to each other, start there, start simple, and then get more advanced only if and when you need to, would be my recommendation.
Right. Yeah. And just bouncing right off of that, you had mentioned that native connectivity, that native integration is not always, but most of the time going to be stronger than what you might be able to do through kind of a third party connection with AI. What would you say are some other best practices for deciding when to automate versus using AI, and where should you start? You had mentioned the integrations page. What are some other examples of maybe where someone should start kind of drawing out their automation processes and AI implementation?
Yeah, I think that the foundation for me is always process documentation. I say this every time I do any kind of presentation, but really the automation is the shiny cool thing. Now AI is the new shiny cool thing. But if you don't have good processes, if you don't have structure around the work with your clients or even with prospective clients, anything that you automate or use AI to make more efficient is going to be baked into those inefficient and poor processes. It's going to cause more time and stress than actually help you be more efficient. So first things first would be to, if you don't already have them, document your processes, or even actually before that, create your processes and then get them documented. Even if it's just on paper, it doesn't have to be in a tool in the workflow system in Wealthbox. That'll come later, but just making sure you've got a clear picture of everything that happens step by step, including any, let's call it branches, where things might divert from the ideal path. What will you do to get that person back on the right track? And back into your normal process. Once you have a clear picture of the step-by-step of what you want to happen, then you can start to codify it, put it into the Wealthbox workflows tool, and then you can start to automate it. So looking at the tools that are being used in that process, seeing where there are direct connections between each of those tools and whether you can make them sync natively. If you can't, go over to, let's say, the Zapier integrations page, see if those tools have integrations there. And then if you need to write some custom code or seek help to do that, that would be the final level in terms of bringing it all together, whether or not you're using AI to support that process. That would be my recommendation for the very, very zoomed out flow of process for developing your automations.
Certainly, yeah. Or you could just reach out to Ariel at Sphynx
Or
Automation.
that too.
She'll be able to help out. Now we'll kind of talk about how does Wealthbox fit into the mix. And Ariel, I do want to hear your perspective on this as well, because you work with Wealthbox firms directly very frequently. But that kind of topic of how can you enhance the efficiency and productivity through automation solutions with Wealthbox specifically. And I wanted to speak to a couple different points that I use in my conversations with firms. And really the rule of thumb with anything, whether it's AI involved or automation specific, but standardization is key. Using templated workflows, and Ariel was just talking about kind of drawing that process out within the workflows tool is very important. But it even goes beyond that with just making the small things a bit more efficient with using templated tasks, templated notes in Wealthbox. Those are all great ways to save time. Specifically on the workflows aspect, not only does Wealthbox have pre-built templates to give you a little bit of inspiration of what other firms are doing, what you can do, but XYPN actually has pre-built templates in Wealthbox for you as well. So workflows, well, I keep talking about workflows. Workflows, of course, being your templated processes. Wealthbox holds your hand throughout that process. And of course, for a lot of the processes that you do need to take care of yourself, workflows is all you need. That workflow will remind you to call your client, to send that email if you're manually typing that out. But layered on top of that, we can add some automation. We can add some additional AI as well. But the last thing I did want to mention on Wealthbox, just overall Wealthbox specific, how am I able to be more productive and efficient using Wealthbox? I would also just mention customization. I think this is something that we see more and more in these different tools, because your relationship with your clients isn't going to be the same as the other advisor in a different city working with different clients. So customizing your CRM, which is meant to be your operating system, to tailor the CRM to your specific needs is a great way to be as efficient as possible. You want to track how your client takes their coffee? Create a custom field. You want to know who your golfers are? Apply a tag to the contact. And just with your day-to-day usage of Wealthbox will help you be more efficient. Now, tagging on the automation and the AI aspect, Ariel, I wanted to kind of bring you in on this conversation, specifically with Wealthbox firms. How are they able to use Wealthbox and be more efficient by tying in some of those automations and AI capabilities?
Yeah, we can do lots and lots of automations within Wealthbox and outside of Wealthbox, connecting them to third-party tools. Some of my favorite automations, and we've done webinars together on this in the past, Chris, so I'm sure that anybody who's more interested in seeing more detail can go back to the previous webinars and check some of those out. But some of my favorite automations when it comes to incorporating Wealthbox include things like linking the right contact or household record to an event that's put on your Wealthbox calendar. The way we typically do that is we start off with the native integration between Google Calendar or Outlook Calendar or iCalendar and Wealthbox. We get the event on the calendar, but once it's there, we use automation through Zapier to pull the details off of that event, find the contact or household related to it, and sync them together, because that doesn't happen automatically in the background. Things also like when a meeting is booked, kicking off a form to take meeting notes. And once that form is submitted, putting those notes into the contact or household record as a note, so that when you go back to your contact or household for their next meeting, you have a historical recording of all the things that you've talked about. And Chris mentioned using notes templates in Wealthbox, which is another great way to add on to that streamlining process. If you've got a notes template, you can kick off a note with a template, and it's merging all of those things together. And then the last thing I would say, my third favorite, and of course they're all kind of my favorite, I just love automation, is kicking off workflows in Wealthbox. Again, if you have a meeting that's booked, let's say it's your introductory call, and you have a specific process you want to make sure you follow so nothing falls through the cracks. Once that meeting is booked in Calendly or Schedule Once or Acuity, or even if it's just put directly on your calendar and we can kick it off from the Wealthbox calendar, we can launch the correct workflow related to that meeting type, so you can make sure that you get notified when things are due and nothing, again, falls through the cracks. We want to make sure that you stay on top of what you need to do at any given time.
Awesome. Thank you. And now zooming out a little bit more. So we talked about kind of Wealthbox, how these things will happen in Wealthbox, but let's zoom out a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about Sphynx Automation. How can Sphynx Automation help to streamline these processes? Zooming out, I know you had mentioned kind of building out forms, right? That note form, that's always super interesting to me because there's a lot of aspects that you want to track. So just kind of zooming out, how can Sphynx Automation help streamline the building out of this process and overall the big picture?
Yeah, we definitely don't do, and I think it's important to clarify, we don't do any work around process creation. That there are plenty of other process experts and geniuses in that zone that can help you with that work if you're struggling. Chris mentioned XYPN has some great templates available for members, and so you don't have to reinvent the wheel or start from scratch. But once you've got those processes established, once you've figured out what you want to happen, where we come in is to take the documentation of step by step, here's what I'd like to occur. We help you figure out how to make it happen. What are the tools that you're already using? Are there any gaps or areas of opportunity to add on a different tool or consolidate tools? Maybe you're using 5 different tools and those can be reduced down to 3. These are the lenses that we're looking at when we're working with clients. Once we figured out the tech stack and figured out the processes, then we start to identify where are those areas of opportunity for automation. We'll ask folks to do a time audit. Where are the areas of your process that you're spending the most time doing manual, repetitive tasks? Are those things like taking the meeting notes or going back into the system and recapping those notes after you've had a call, adding tasks, things like that? Once we kind of know where those areas of opportunity are, then we outline what it will look like to work with us and how you'd like to work with us, whether you want to be more involved in the process as a joint engagement, like a coaching session or group of sessions, or whether it's something you're like, hey, I have time and energy, but I would rather spend those on working with my clients or generating more business, and I'll let you do the setup for me. One other thing I didn't mention before is that we've also created a custom Wealthbox Zapier integration to add on to the functionality that Wealthbox's out-of-the-box integration offers. It's not a replacement, it's more of an overlay, let's call it. It's a symbiotic addition to the existing functionality that Wealthbox's existing Zapier integration offers. And that's been in place for a few years now. We're actually on version 10 because every couple of months we'll get requests to add a new feature, and we'll just, develop that and add it in. And it can do things like modifying existing contact records. If you've got a contact created when they come in as a lead, but later on when they onboard as a client, you've, let's say, collected more data in an onboarding questionnaire in Jotform or Precise FP, we can find that existing contact and we can update it with the new data. We can also do things like reschedule tasks or workflows. If your meeting gets rescheduled with a client, Instead of just kicking those things off and creating new records, we can actually find and modify existing records using the custom integration that we've built out. So those are the primary ways that we help folks in terms of the tech and the automation. And as Sarah said, our contact information will be available at the end. If you have questions, you can absolutely feel free to reach out anytime. We're happy to chat through whether we can assist you with your specific needs.
Awesome. And version 10 of that Zapier kind of enhancement of Wealthbox to Zapier is huge. I'm a huge fan of that. There's actually a question that came in a little bit earlier that specifically is asking about a solution, which is that kind of Zapier enhancement. So I'll actually pull my screen up just to put up a Q&A slide here. We'll take a look at some of those questions that have been coming in. I have been looking at the questions. I didn't think that these questions were specific to anything that we were talking about. So we'll kind of open up for a little bit of a Q&A session now to address some of those questions. So an earlier question did come in just from someone who was interested in my Zoom setup with lighting, camera, microphone. Definitely reach out. More than happy to send you everything that I use. Specifically, how am I able to continue looking at the camera? I do have a teleprompter set up similar to the news stations and such, so I'm able to see the text that I want to read while looking at the camera. There's, of course, a microphone here. So definitely reach out. There's going to be some contact information here in a minute. But there's another part of that question here of someone wanting to switch to a new CRM like Wealthbox. You want a CRM that stores all communication like video, text, phone calls, emails. Does Wealthbox have full communication tracking? And that's a really good question from the perspective of Wealthbox, because Wealthbox is the CRM. It's the communication, it's the customer relationship tool, the management tool that helps you track the internal communication that you need to have with your clients. The actual outbound communication does happen externally. It happens outside of Wealthbox. So if you are making phone calls, you are using a phone system externally from Wealthbox. We do offer a lot of integrations with voice systems. There's Lightspeed Simply, there's Intels, there's a good handful that we natively directly integrate with. Texting is another one that we don't have in-house, but we have amazing integrations with actually some of the phone calling features, but also My Rep Chat. All right, that is an awesome compliant tool to archive that as well and kind of make sure that you're compliant. Emails, that's something that is tracked on the back end, Smarsh Global Relay, as well as video. There are a lot of different marketing tools that can store videos that you send out to clients that you are able to integrate into Wealthbox as well. So overall, what I wanted to mention, CRM, customer relationship management, that's for the reminders of what you do need to do. The actual communication is actually done outside, but can still be tracked in Wealthbox. So hopefully that answers your question there. But Ariel, going back to that that enhanced Zapier connection, there's a question that came up here. Someone that created a Zap themselves. It's a Zap that links tasks in Wealthbox to a Google task that they're using, which first and foremost, I would argue that you should just leave all your tasks in Wealthbox. Use Wealthbox as your master list of all tasks. But back to the question, it's only one way, meaning that they cannot push updates to existing tasks in Wealthbox or from Wealthbox to Google Task. Have you ever created a Zap that will update the Google Task when the Wealthbox task is updated? So we're looking at a trigger here, looking for when a task is updated. Ariel, take the stage. I know this is one of the main things that kind of you get with this enhanced Zapier connection. So what would you do in that situation?
Yeah, and it really depends. This actually is not a trigger that we have available yet. And I say yet because, again, we're on version 10, and this is how the iterations happen with the app. So if you're talking about updating, meaning you've changed the name or the due date of a task and you want to push that into Google Tasks from Wealthbox, that's not currently an available trigger, although it certainly could be. But if you're talking about more, hey, I've completed a task in Wealthbox and I want to also simultaneously mark it as complete in Google Tasks, that right now is an available trigger that we have. So we could definitely do something along those lines, and certainly back the other direction. If you update a due date or a name in Google Tasks, we can currently, in conjunction with our custom integration, find that existing task in Wealthbox and update it in Google. I'm sorry, I'm saying another way. We can find that task in Wealthbox and we can update it according to what was updated in Google Tasks. So we can make them match that direction. And if
Awesome.
you have follow-up questions, Gregory, please feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A.
Yeah, and with that being said, if Gregory, if you want to just have a direct conversation, I actually have a follow-up contact slide for both Wealthbox and Sphynx. I know that Sarah will mention the follow-up contacts again towards the end, but I'll just kind of leave this up if anyone does want to schedule a call or set up a demo with Wealthbox. And just to really kind of round the answer to your question out, Gregory, you didn't do anything wrong. That is a limitation of the native Wealthbox Zapier connection right now. But with that enhanced connection that Sphynx Automation had built out, you can get closer to that possibility. Let's see, another question here, is this Zapier V10 overlay its own app, or is it a Zap template that uses the native Wealthbox and Wealthbox 2.0 apps already in Zapier? Ariel, I'll let you speak to what that experience looks like with that Zapier tool.
Yeah, so it is the 2.0 version. So we went from 1.9 being version 9 to 2.0. So Nick, I believe you already have our custom Zapier Wealthbox integration. So 2.0 is version 10 right now. And it sounds like maybe we're going to be coming out with 2.1 sometime in the near future. And it's a separate Zap, or rather a separate app, not a template for Zap, but it is a separate application that you plug into Zapier the same way you use the regular Wealthbox Zapier integration or any other application integration in Zapier. It's got its own separate link, and once you purchase it on our website, you'll get instructions to set that up. But once it's in your account and you've authenticated, you'll get lifetime access to the current version and any other future updates that we roll out. It's just a one-time fee for lifetime access, including all updates.
Perfect. Thank you. And I saw another question just in terms of that native Wealthbox Zapier connection, question of who would be responsible for optimizing that, who was actually in charge of building that. That is on the Wealthbox side, and it is on our end to enhance that, and it is on our roadmap. This is something that I've been working with our product team on enhancing a little bit, some of the native capabilities there. But the way that Ariel and her team are staying on top of these enhancements, version 10, right? Where we're talking about 10 iterations already, that's always going to be beneficial as well. So just know that there are going to be enhancements to the native connection to Zapier as well. Another question for you here, Ariel. This is something that I actually see pretty frequently. So I'm curious as to what your solution is to this. Are there triggers to kick off a workflow in Wealthbox based on a specific date, based on a birth date, right? So start this workflow when a client turns 65. What would your solution to something like that be?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's not exactly a straightforward answer. Part of that is a limitation in Zapier. There is no native Wealthbox functionality to do this. I'll start by saying that. But the way that I would typically work around this at a high level, there might be some nuances depending upon the tools that you're using and your actual process. But what we typically do for age-related tasks is when the client onboards, when you've collected their birthday and you've created that new contact record, that's usually the point where we'll utilize code or logic in Zapier or elsewhere to, let's say, pre-populate all of those age-related tasks for future reference. And we can set those due dates out really far in the future. We can set them out years, decades in the future, and they can wait there until you're ready to actually do them. That way you're kind of queuing them up all at once, and when they actually occur, the dates become due, if that makes sense. So I hope that helps answer the question. I know it's not exactly as straightforward as, hey, this client is turning 65 in 1 month or 6 months, go ahead and kick it off. We usually do that much earlier in the process for various reasons, having to do particularly with the limitations around date-based triggers in Zapier in general, but there are ways around it.
Yeah, that's a really good solution. I actually have not thought of that myself. That's a really good way to go about it. And one thing that I'll actually mention is in workflows in Wealthbox, not only do you have a milestone capability to make sure that the due dates are relative to that birthday, but you can also push out the start date, which I do believe is possible with Zapier as well, to push out that start date to where those upcoming steps don't even appear on your to-do list until maybe that year, whatever you choose to set up. So definitely a lot of capabilities there. And if you want to set that up, that is definitely more of an advanced automation there. you have the contact info for Sphynx Automation right here on the screen. Looks like another question did pop in here. Do you recommend AI meeting note taker tools like Fireflies, Otter, Fathom, or do you have a native tool that does something similar? On the Wealthbox end, we don't have a native tool. We do rely on integrations for that, but we're talking native integrations that will automatically feed those notes into Wealthbox. That, of course, the native tools that we integrate with, it does broaden the possibility with Zapier, with automating that further with the help of Ariel and her team, or just directly through Zapier. There's a lot of possibilities there. So we don't have anything internally in Wealthbox that would natively do that for you, but a lot of integrations that are native and even more available through something like Zapier. But Ariel, anything to add? What are some common solutions to maybe the three tools mentioned here: Fireflies, Otter, Fathom, none of which Wealthbox natively integrates with? We do integrate with a couple others. What
Yeah.
solutions have you kind of created for some folks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have not created a native tool in under Sphynx umbrella, but we've actually ended up partnering very recently for the first time in our business history with a tool called Time. And they're a fairly new tool, but they are extremely robust and already quite advanced in my opinion. And more so than that, I'm looking at the trajectory of the company and the innovations that they're hoping to make. But right now, today, they offer direct integration with Wealthbox for things like transcribed notes and action items that are generated via AI in the tool. You don't need Zapier to connect those two. And there are others. I mean, there are other advisor specific ones, and there are others that are non-advisor specific. But when we talk about the limitations of AI, my concern when it's something that's not specific to advisors is the security aspect. It's really important to make sure that you know who has access to that data and what will be done with it after the fact. And so that's always a concern to keep in the back of your mind when you're evaluating the different tools. And there are, again, a lot of them out there that do a lot of different things. So take your pick. There's a lot.
Awesome. Yeah. Another question here, just because your answer to the birthday webinar was really good. There is another question kind of similar here that could be answered on the Wealthbox side, but I also would like to hear your approach with this. Is there a way to kick off a workflow by tags? For instance, start this workflow for clients tagged a certain way. In Wealthbox natively, there is currently no way to start a workflow in bulk based on a specific list. This is, I think, more of a preventative measure to make sure that you're not accidentally starting 100 workflows and overloading yourself with all these different steps that are there. But there definitely is a way to automate this. But Ariel, I wanted to get your take on this. How would you automate something like that? Clients have a certain tag, and uh, of course, that would be an update on Zapier. So I just want to hear a little bit more from you.
Yeah, we could do it similarly to how I mentioned about the birth date at intake. When you've gotten them in as a new client contact record, we could trigger off of that. But with tags, unlike with age-based tasks, we do have in our custom integration a updated contact trigger that checks only for new or updated tags being applied to an existing contact record. So if you've added a contact already, and then later on you go back and I guess we could even do the same thing for birthday. I'm going to revise my previous answer because that same trigger also does check for updates on specific fields, including the date of birth. So if you've added a contact already and later on you go back and you add a tag or you change a tag and it includes things like RMD, or you add their birth date later on after you've already put the contact record in, we could use the custom integration to trigger in both of those scenarios. And then we can use filters and branching in Zapier, again, assuming we're using Zapier to kick that off, to say like, hey, only run this automation if this specific tag is applied, in this example, RMD, to then go and kick off the RMD related workflow and make sure you have all the tasks assigned within the workflow that you need to do that process of helping the client make their RMDs every year.
Awesome. Thank you for going into that. That's a really good point as well, with creating a contact where you might not have a birthday yet, right? If you're prospecting, you might not have that at the very beginning. So really good point. I saw another kind of question slash thought here. Nick would like to learn more about how to set up the start date of a task, which I think you might be referring to the workflow that I was referencing earlier in both Wealthbox natively as well as in Zapier. On the Wealthbox side, natively, feel free to reach out to our team. We have a lot of education resources on our end where you can connect with someone at Wealthbox to talk a little bit more about that capability. And then in Zapier, you could reach out to Sphynx Automation, talk a little bit about what Zapier can do for you with Wealthbox, and they'll be able to help you out with that as well. Um, looks like another question or thought here with a request for Wealthbox to enhance some of the native triggers. And that is, again, something that is on our roadmap. So we will be incorporating that with Zapier directly. Looks like some additional enhancement requests with Right Capital integration. Yeah, enhancements to all integrations is actually a big focus for us in the near term to actually put a lot of resources into making the existing integrations better. So definitely look out for more information on that. But it looks like we covered all of the questions, Ariel. This is always amazing. I appreciate kind of co-hosting this with you. Always an amazing conversation here. So with that, I think we can turn it back over to Sarah for closing remarks.
All right. Thank you both for just hosting such a active dialogue with each other and just showing everybody just how powerful strategic automation can be within the firm. So this was really fruitful. This was great. And just to provide some color as far as the Wealthbox partnership that XYPN has, Wealthbox really grew up with us. So they are one of our included benefits that you will get if you join XYPN membership. Basic is included in membership, and then there is a very good discount with Pro. It is $11.90 per user per license for the Pro license, and then also any additional non-member licenses are $30 per month as well. So it is really great, and we really enjoy our partnership. We think that Wealthbox is fantastic. So that
Likewise.
is, yeah, thanks. So without further ado, yeah, we are ready to wrap up. If you are interested in learning more or just working with Ariel in Sphynx Automation, then I prompt you to sign up for the introductory call. I will drop that link in the chat below. And then if you're interested in scheduling a demo with Wealthbox, learning more about Wealthbox, you can contact them at their sales@wealthbox.com email address, and that is there. And then if you're interested in scheduling a call with XYPN teammates to just learn more about XYPN, then I also encourage you to do that as well. All right, folks, as you leave this webinar, there is going to be a feedback survey. Please do fill that out so that we can continue giving you some fruitful content. Otherwise, I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to maybe seeing you guys at live. I'll see you, Ariel and Chris, at live, so I'll drop in at your workshop,
See
perhaps
you
if I
then,
have
Sarah.
time. All right, bye, all. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.